and gentlemen,
Let's go.
Gaming, tech, culture.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's go.
You're listening to the Cool Black Nerd Podcast, presented by Say What Radio.
Welcome everybody to episode 19 of the Cool Black Nerd Podcast. This is Potassium. I'm your host, Jules. I'm here with our co-host, Justice. Justice, how are you doing?
I am fine. I'm living corona-free, still alive.
That's good. I'm glad you're coronavirus free. This is day 110 in the coronavirus quarantine captain's log.
We missed a couple of days there.
Hey, look, we'll get into that. There's a couple of reasons for that.
Okay.
I think. I mean, you know, everybody's just in the house. You feel like you don't have nothing to do, but then
everything comes at you.
Everything happens, man. Everything happens. And I guess we can jump right into it, because one of the things that I definitely want to talk about, and this is something that happened to me, so I kind of went through it a little bit, is, you know, a lot of people, the economy is struggling right now, and a lot of people are losing jobs at this time. I was one of those people. Now, my particular job was not directly related to coronavirus, but let's not forget that there are millions and millions of jobs, that are being lost right now. Now, we can get into my situation a little bit later, but I just wanted to kind of talk about what's going on. Like, there's a lot of layoffs and furloughs that have been going on during this time period. Like, you know, as of May, 39 million people had lost their jobs.
Like, that's crazy. I mean, 39 million in the U.S.
Yeah, 39 million just in the U.S. And that number is not even like temporary layoffs or furloughs. Like, those are permanent job cuts. Like, those are jobs that are not coming back. So consider that. Like, think about how many people on top of that are getting furloughed or are getting like a temporary layoff. A lot of companies are now realizing that they did not need as many people as they thought they needed. People are finding out that maybe we don't need this office building that we used to have, since we don't have a need for that many people anymore. And a lot of companies are realizing that they can run their business in a much more lean fashion, streamlining the business. And you have to think about the cost that has on people. For me personally, my company recently went through some changes, the company that I work for. And as part of those changes, they did a reorganization, and my position, just everybody that had the same job title as me, was let go. I think for us, fortunately, we had a bit more of a cushion than some other people may have had, because, you know, we were given a certain amount of time to try to find a new role within the company. I mean, up until that date, we would receive our regular pay. I mean, if we weren't able to find a position, we would have a pretty, at least for me, you know, I can't really speak for everybody else, but at least for me, it was a pretty substantial severance package. At the time when I first found out about it, that felt good to know that I had some sort of backup. But what you start to realize, or what I started to realize, what I began to feel is like, as I'm going along, not getting a job, not finding a job, you start to realize, like, even with all of that backup, it's still extremely stressful.
Yes. A lot of the people that even still have their jobs, the stress that they're under of, one, what is happening just on the outside in the world, two, not being able to go about your life as you normally would have thought. And there's really no one saying when this is going to change and what's going to happen when all of this is over, or if it will ever be over. Plus, you're worrying about your family. You're worrying about whether or not your job will be able to still be there later on. But they're saying that right now that most people are going through the same stress that, you know, heart attack patients and those who have been in certain situations such as war or PTSD are going through on a daily basis right now, just because, one, they were never, well, I guess there's really no way to actually be warned of this, but they just weren't prepared, period.
Yeah, exactly. For me personally, it made me realize something that I felt like, so I like to try to keep 6 months worth of expenses saved. I think that's a good practice for everybody. But the truth is, as I was going through that, it began to feel like that might not be enough. That's one of those things that you don't really think about when you think about something like you're losing your job unexpectedly like that. I have a few tips here that I think that might help people.
One thing about it, unfortunately, it will always be a divide necessarily along race in general. But I think this is more just kind of like an American thing, honestly, where most are living paycheck to paycheck. There are some who have a little bit more and other people who have a little bit less. But even in those people who have more wealth, they're still living paycheck to paycheck, unless you get into those people that are more into the 1% type stuff. Those are the only ones where they're just financially viable no matter what. And I don't think people realize that. I think a lot of people feel bad because, oh, I don't think about saving this because I can't, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
They have to realize they're not the only ones. I'm pretty sure those people that you're looking at, those $1 million houses, if they lose their job tomorrow, they wouldn't be able to stay in their house.
Yeah, I do agree with that for sure. I think there's a lot of people that are like
people
that. Yeah.
need to kind of give themselves a little bit of leeway on that, in learning that they still need to be able to get to a place where people like you are being able to do the 6 months of the expenses.
And I'm telling you, even though I have 6 months, like I definitely got to a point where I hadn't even dipped into that yet. And it felt like that's not enough. I think there's a lot of things that need to go on. So I would say my first tip is definitely now, while you have a job, if you can, you need to start saving money. Pay off your debts first. If you have credit card debt, you want to get rid of that as fast as possible, because nobody needs to be out here paying 20+% interest on anything. That's crazy. So you definitely need to get that taken care of immediately. After you do that, you need to start saving money. And these are things that you need to be doing before you even get into some of the tips that I'm about to get into. And this would just be for people that have been recently paid off. Like the first thing you need to do, you need to really sit down and look at what memberships and services that you have subscriptions to.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
And you really need to think about how much that stuff is costing you. So, you know us, we like to talk about Netflix and HBO Max and whatever else, but all of those things cost money. And it doesn't sound like a lot off top. With I think the cheapest Netflix you can get is $10 a month, might be 11 or 12 now. With HBO Max is what, 15?
Yeah.
Stars is like $10. Then, you know, you got to have Spotify. That's $10. You know, you balling like me. So you got Google Play Music as well, just because. So that's another 10. You know what I'm saying? So it
adds up.
All of those little things add up. So all of these subscriptions add up that start out sounding insignificant. But when you really go down and look through your budget, I think I was surprised that I'm spending over $100 a month on subscription services.
That's a really good point. I think people need to pay attention to that. Would you ever advocate them doing a yearly instead?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is definitely something you need to take advantage of. So for me, like one of the things I did with HBO Plus, they had an option where you could pay for 3 years up front. But in doing that, when you break down that cost, it ended up being $3.50 a month.
Wow.
Something like that versus the $10 that it is regularly. So when you have an opportunity to take advantage of things like that, I think you should definitely do it. But when you can't, you need to definitely scrutinize those subscriptions, because those will add up on you. I think the next thing you need to do is draw up a budget, like really sit down and budget and figure out how much money do you spend on things that are necessary. So you've already scrutinized your spending. You've taken a look at things that are unnecessary, things that you can live without. One thing I'm also going to suggest for that, ladies and gentlemen, you do not need cable. You do need internet, but you probably do not need cable.
That's a very good one too. I know a lot of people think they have to have both and not one.
Right. There are a lot of options for you to be able to entertain yourself for free on the internet, especially when you're in a situation where now you really need to start saving money and start really budgeting your life. Like, and when I say budget your life, like you really need to sit down and budget, like, this is how much I spend on groceries. This is how much my bills cost. And you need to, for some of your bills, you're going to have to create a range. So like electricity bills, water bills, you know that sometimes those bills are higher or lower depending on what time of the year it is, whether you've had house guests or whatever. So don't just go find your lowest electricity bill and say that's what it is. And once you have your budget together, now you need to look at what sort of income do you have. If you have a severance package that's part of you being laid off or let go, what are the details? Like get into the fine print. Like, for example, it was interesting to me, and this is not what I expected, that depending on if I found a job with the company within a certain amount of time, I would have to pay money back from the severance package.
Wow.
Yeah. So if I had gotten to the point where, you know, it was officially my last day and I was let go, I would get that severance package in the next pay period. And then, for example, I'm just making up some numbers because I don't remember specifically what it was, but it's like, for example, if you're hired within 30 days, you have to pay back 95%. If you're hired within from 30 days to 3 months, you have to pay back 75%. If you're hired from 3 months to 6 months, you have to pay back 50%. And it went out for like a year. If I was hired back within a certain amount of time, I would have to pay back a certain amount of the money that I got from the severance package. So you're going to want to pay attention to the details of your severance package. And you're also going to want to figure out what sort of benefits you still have access to. So are your benefits going to expire at the time that you're let go? Or are they going to extend for 30, 60, 90 days, whatever that is? You need to develop a plan around that too, because you don't want to be in a situation where you think you have insurance or you think you have healthcare, because a lot of us get that from our jobs. And then something happens. What are you going to do? No, I'm asking you, what are you going to do?
Well, you know me.
Exactly. No, I'm kidding. Are you a hustler?
I'm going to sell something. I hate to say it like that, but it's true.
But you're going to sell something.
But you're right.
I mean, and that's part of your plan. That needs to be part of your plan. Like, yeah, go ahead.
A lot of people don't think about that. And one reason for that is because we've said this on the show many times before. A lot of the times, majority of the time, for people like us, we were told you go to school, you get a degree, you get a job, that's it. There's really nothing beyond that. In other situations, for other people, a lot of times they're told you go to school, you get a job, you get the house or whatever like that. But you also have secondary income. You have a backup. You do not rely on that job because it can be gone. And if it's gone, you need to be able to figure out what to do and to be able to keep rolling. That's not one, a lot of us aren't given that chance. And two, it was just never told to us. I know for a fact, the first time somebody said secondary income, I was like, damn, I got to have two jobs. Like the thought just never occurred to me that not necessarily you having two jobs, but you're able to get a second stream of income doing something either that you know or you can invest in. And that just never was something that was told to me in the beginning.
Yeah. Let me say this too. So to your point, you're not necessarily talking about, oh, I got a full-time job. Now I got to go get a part-time job. Your secondary stream of income can be something that you just love to do. So for me, for a long time, that was just refereeing basketball. Like I could go referee some, middle school and high school games, some basketball tournaments, some AAU tournaments, and get some money. And if I did that enough, could I live off of it? Sure. But being able to say that it's something that you do, and should you really need to lean into it, you can. It can be something that you would do for free. In fact, that's probably what it should be, because it'll be something that you love to do. So you'll probably be good at it just because you really like doing it. Last tip I would say is discuss references with the people that you work with. Like talk to the people that you work with. If you haven't fostered relationships with people at your job, you need to do that now. And I can speak to my own personal experience in this. I feel like the reason that I was able to find another role at my company, a big part of the reason is just because I had so many people that were in my corner.
Wow.
When they found out I had people calling me, like I didn't even have to call anybody. And I can't tell you how helpful that was. Like, even if it was somebody who just called and said, hey, I heard about what happened, put me down as a reference, whatever you need. If I know somebody or if anything, I will send an email blindly to somebody for you. Just let me know. Like that is an amazing, amazing feeling. So you need to absolutely take advantage of the opportunity that you have to build relationships with people that you work with. If you have not done that, you need to start doing that. It can be as easy as, for me, I'm from Houston, so I love all Houston sports teams. I work with a lot of Cowboys fans, and it was just as easy as making jokes about the Texans and the Cowboys and building a relationship that way. So I think that kind of leads into the next part of it for me. It's talking about some of the mental health issues that can be related to losing your job, especially when you don't expect it.
I think a lot of working people, because they are working, they're tired and they're pretty much in that grind. And, they don't have the best job to begin with. It pays good. It gets them where they need to be, but they're not happy in it, or they're not happy in somewhere else in their life. They forge on with the hope that everything will be all right, that nothing will be wrong. And that gets them through the day, because I don't want to have to deal with another thing, if that makes sense. So I think that's one reason why a lot of the times this type of stuff also is not even thought of, or like it comes to them, but just the thought gives them anxiety.
Yeah.
Hate that.
Okay. I
hate that that's where we are. But I think had it been where this was more of a possibility type thing, and the drastic measures that we had to take in just shutting everything down, and this is something that had never actually been done in our lifetime or even in our parents' lifetime for this, nobody was just ready for. And considering that we'd already had this thought process of happy-go-lucky type stuff and kind of ignoring a lot of things, it's like what you're saying, is putting it to the forefront that you have to do it. You have to face it. It's nothing that you
Mhm.
can just put away and be like the boogeyman in the closet and never go in that room. Nope, it's coming for you. It definitely is
Yeah.
coming to your door. The shit is coming.
I got you. I got you. So this is just a quick list that our researcher, who is amazing, came up with. She came up with this list of just job loss and related mental health issues. So a loss of identity and a sense of purpose.
Oh, yeah.
You know, feeling unappreciated, or feeling that you're not essential anymore. I guess I would say kind of leaning more into like feeling that your company or the people at your company
Yeah.
don't care about you personally. You'll get angry. You'll be feeling scared. You'll feel jealous of others who can still work. You'll feel lost,
Yeah.
like you don't know what to do next. You'll have trouble sleeping, trouble concentrating. You'll be worried about how you'll take care of yourself and how you provide to
Yeah.
help that like normal. Acknowledge that you feel this way. Acknowledge how you feel. And then I would say seek out resources that can help you. There's a lot of things on the internet that are available for you, even directly from like the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. They have things that you can do to deal with stress related to job loss and also related to COVID-19 and coronavirus
And
pandemic.
also because there's been more of a it takes a village type feeling within this pandemic. I think that's one thing that has come out of this. There'll be so many people that have been in the same situation and they will pull things together or barter with you. Like you may have some things that they need and vice versa. Also, of course, a lot of people feel shame or something in this in asking for help or going to a food bank or something like that. But you'll be surprised at that fellowship that you'll have going to see those other people, not necessarily going to see them, but when you go, you see these other people and you just start talking. I went to go pick up a package and we were all having to wait outside because of this, because they wouldn't, allow more than, I think it was 2 people in the building at the time. And this is Texas. It's hot. We was melting. And the first everybody out there was talking about was how hot it was. And it was one young lady, unfortunately, who had moved from New Jersey to here right before all of this happened. So she was just like, what is this? And we actually started talking to her about the things to expect here, where she should go, how she should handle, stuff right now. And then there were other people going like, hey, well, that place is closed now. You can go here and that. It was a really enlightening conversation. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I don't think I would have had this conversation 2019 with somebody, period.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to point out that Jules had actually said was when you acknowledge how you're feeling, also grieve for what you lost. I think there's one thing that people skip over a lot of the times. They just kind of go, well, it happened. No, you need to go through the steps of it, because if you don't, you're going to bottle up. It's going to be toxic and it's going to come back out again. Like I said before, the shit is coming for you. It will not let it go because you haven't let it go. So do go through that process as well. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Oh, no, you're good. You're good. Also, you're going to want to focus on the present. Like, don't be so caught up in what happened to you in losing your job that you just can't do anything. And you also can't be focused too much on the future. Like, you need to focus on what's happening now and making sure that you're taking care of yourself and doing the things that you need to do to meet whatever goals you have set. And you also want to use your energy wisely. Just make sure you're directing your efforts in the areas that they need to go. Is really what I can say about that.
You can take up some other stuff. You can find some things to do, learn something new. And I know people hate saying all of that. Maybe you just want to be lazy. Maybe you worked all this time and this is a way to be like, okay, well, I'll take up some gardening stuff, but don't just isolate yourself and don't reach out to other people or try to connect with other people. You still have to be social, because honestly, being in that rut is just going to make you, I'm going to say it again, the shit is coming for you. Don't do it. I'm sorry. That's going to be the thing.
No worry. That's the theme. The shit is coming for you. Okay. And I can say for me personally, when I first found out about my situation, I was upset for maybe a day. And I think part of the reason I wasn't upset for too long is because I knew that a reorganization was happening. I will admit during that whole time, I did not think that my job was going to be at risk until a week before we were supposed to find out. And I think for me personally, and I know that this is not how it would work for a lot of people, but for me, I was able to think about, okay, if I think about what it is that I do and the team that I'm on, there's 2 ways that this could go. My team can stay intact and it'll be fine. Everybody will be, all of us will have our jobs. Everything's going to be okay. Or I can see how from a business perspective, it makes sense to reorganize my team. Or I could see how somebody who was thinking how do we make this more efficient or make it a leaner structure, I could see how it would affect my team. And I think for me, being able to think through that was helpful in that initial shock, because I kind of understood where it could come from. And it wasn't necessarily about me personally, even though I was still upset. Like, don't get it wrong, I was definitely upset when I found out. But I was, oh, you just going to say he was, yeah, I vented probably. And that's okay. Because like I said, you got to accept your feelings. But after that, I had a conversation with someone at my job, and one of the things they said, and we had talked for a long time, this was somebody who was very helpful. Like, they reviewed my resume with me. They talked to me about some positions that they knew that were coming open. But at the end of that conversation, they're the ones that kind of put me onto this. They said, hey, you need to make sure that you take advantage of any mental health resources, because a lot of people don't think about the stress that you're going to go through. You're going to have ups and downs that, like, right now, you probably don't think you're going to have, but you will. So you need to pay attention to any resources that can help you with that. And at the time, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. And, it happened. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, there would be days when I felt great. I can apply for 1 million jobs today. I can update my LinkedIn and do all of the things. And then the next day, I would just be feeling like I'm 100% over it. There's no way that I'm going to do anything that's related to any type of job, me finding a job, doing the job that I'm losing. Like, you couldn't tell me anything. So I think that you have to acknowledge that, and you need to be aware that it is going to happen. Yeah. I mean, that's really all I can say about that.
I completely understand. So even for me, I haven't actually had it affect me like that, but I did see the ramp up in what they were looking for and what they were trying to do for the job. And it was a lot. And it was to one point where I was just like, I can't handle this. And a lot of the things that they were offering for a job, part of this was talking to people. And even though I was talking to you guys and my other friends and things like that, it was still just, I still needed to talk about it because I didn't want to overwhelm you guys because you already have it. And I didn't want to overwhelm my other friends for the same reason. So I started talking to a wellness coach, and she was just helping me through some of the things that I can be doing. Because like you said, doing those things that you said makes a whole lot of sense. I think for some people, it was just like, okay, so where do I start? How do I go about this? And even though I had started on my own and I had done it, it was still so helpful to just say it out loud to somebody else and they assist you along with it, because there were things that I couldn't actually foresee or be able to do necessarily. And even if I told you guys, because you're dealing with your own stuff, you couldn't give me enough information or I guess validation and feeling like, this is something I can be done with. Because I think, I'm going to go back to this again, is Cool Black Nerd. For Black people in general, they kind of feel like as long as I can talk to my friends or I can talk to my family or something like that, I should be good. But that heaps pressure and a lot onto those people as well. Even if you're talking to your pastor, like they're going through a lot. So it wouldn't hurt to talk to somebody else. If you have that ability to talk to somebody else. And right now, as Jules said, there are a lot of options to be able to talk to someone just in general about this. You could just be like, I have no idea what's going on. And they'll be like, okay, neither do I. What do you feel about that? That feels good to get it off your chest sometimes. You don't have to necessarily bottle that stuff up and be like, okay, well, talking to somebody is taboo, quote unquote.
Yeah, pretty much. I agree with that. And I think that that's just one of the things that I hope that if anybody that's listening is going through it, I hope that's something that you will try to take advantage of. Just talking to somebody that can help you is so useful. And like Justice is saying, you may want to talk to somebody whose job it is to listen to those conversations or to be a part of those conversations, because a lot of times, a lot of people are going through a lot of things. And like, I can admit that there were times where I would get on the game and come to play with you guys, and I'll be like, all right, I have things I want to say, but I've been talking about this for 2 weeks, and I know y'all are tired of hearing of it, so I'm just not going to say nothing. Or I'm going to try not to say anything about it unless somebody asks. And it definitely helps to have somebody where you can just honestly just word vomit at them and just let it happen.
And I think people feel bad for having to do that to other people. I know I would feel like that all the time in some aspects in talking to some of my friends, but I was always okay if they did it to me because I knew what it felt like just to be able to need to get it out. So it's really crazy that we think like that. It's like, okay, I know what it feels like, but then you're like, why would you hold it in? That never made any sense to me. It's just like, you know what it feels like to not be able to talk about this, but you're going to hold it in. Friends are there for a reason. But there are instances where you're like, okay, well, I don't want to keep overloading them. Let me talk to this person or reach out to somebody else. And in this day and age, because this is such a unique situation, this has never happened before. There's no reason why you cannot do something you've never done before. There's no reason in this world.
And let me say this too. While I personally think it is the best to talk to somebody, I know that may not be the best outlet for everybody, but find that whatever outlet is going to be healthy for you. That's what I have to say about that. And I think now is probably a good time to transition.
Well, since we're talking about, you're right. Since we're talking about the jobs and things like that, some people tend to feel like some things are just not seen necessarily as jobs.
Yep, I've heard that before.
Or viable.
Specifically, what we're referring to is everybody's favorite podcaster, Joe Rogan. Recently, Joe Rogan made some comments about gaming in general, saying that gaming was a waste of time. And he said it was fun. Like, he admitted that it was fun. He enjoys playing games. But he was just saying, like, for those kids that play games, you're wasting your time because games will not get you a job. It won't translate into something that you can do for a living, apparently.
Which is very odd. And you brought this up.
What's funny to me about that is when I think about what Joe Rogan does, primarily I know he's very popular as a UFC commentator, but the thing that I think most people know him for is the Joe Rogan podcast. And I would say that if I was taking that same view, Joe, you're just sitting down having conversations with people. A lot of people may consider that a waste of time. I don't, obviously, as I'm sitting here having a conversation with you, Justice, but I'm just saying that I think that was a very short-sighted thing for him to say.
But the backlash was hilarious. You would have thought that he eats babies or something. It was just insane. Like, I mean, every single gamer came after him. And, one of the most notorious streamers and gamers that are out there, Ninja, Tyler Blevins, basically schooled him on how he was able to make this something. And that was to his point of him saying that you had to be like the 1% athlete to be able to make it to the NBA, NHL, NFL, all that stuff like that, which is true. You have to have serious talent to be able to make it to those. Right. Gaming is
you definitely
different.
Do.
You could necessarily have no talent.
Actually, whatsoever. I wouldn't even say that. I would not even say that gaming is different, Jessica. And I'm going to give you an example. I love basketball. I absolutely love it. I played basketball when I was a kid. I played elementary. I played when I was in middle school. I played when I was in high school. Notice I didn't say that I was on the teams when I was in middle school and high school, because I was definitely not good at basketball. But if we just think about the conversation that we just had, what did I say that I do for secondary income? I referee middle school and high school basketball games. So me having the experience playing basketball, that being a sport that I love, there are other things that I can do that are still related to basketball that millions of people do to get a job. There are coaches, there are trainers, there are referees, there's GMs, there's stats people. All of these things apply to that industry, where it is also true, in order for you to become a professional basketball player, you need to be in the top 1 or 0.1%, whatever he said. And I think that was Ninja's point with gaming. He was saying, yes, in order for you to be on a professional esports team, yes, you do need to be in the top 1%. But for you to be a successful streamer, you don't need to be that. For you to be somebody who coaches people on how to play games, you don't need to be in the top 1%. For you to be somebody that develops games, you don't need to be in the top 1%. So I think he just had a very narrow view of what game. Like, I think he was just thinking the only thing that you can do with video games is play games.
I don't see how that's possible. That's what's so funny.
Yeah.
I really am so surprised that he didn't get that this is an industry that right now is more lucrative than podcasting in some aspects.
This just hit me. Joe Rogan loves UFC and MMA. He trains for this. He's not good enough to be in the UFC, but you literally have a job now as a commentator. Come on, Joe.
You're right. You've said this before. There are people that that were just like, I don't get why watching video games or somebody else playing video games is something you do. Honestly, it's entertaining. It's just like, to me, it would be like watching a sitcom or watching basketball or football or whatever, you like to be able to see these people entertain you in some way, shape, or form. Basketball players, they're able to do moves that you've never seen before, and you score, and you want your team to win. It's the exact same thing in this, because usually they're doing it against either an AI or another player, and they're usually doing it together, and it's entertaining. It very much is, even if the people are annoying, such as the biggest guy on Twitch right now, since Tyler's on a different one, Dr. Disrespect. The dude's name is Dr. Disrespect. That'll tell you what he's going to be doing the entire time.
Yeah, well, he got banned recently, so well,
it's not the first one.
I mean, he did it to himself somehow, I guess. But I understand what you're saying, and I agree with that. Like, to me, especially with streaming, it's the same thing. Like, you find a streamer that you like, you enjoy whatever personality they have, and they're just playing the games that you like to play. Maybe they do something that you've never seen anybody do, or that you haven't tried yourself, and now maybe you can try it and see if you can do it. And I just think that he took a very narrow view, and maybe, hopefully, his comments got taken out of context. They didn't?
I mean,
okay,
if you can watch, I'll continue a clip after this and you can watch it, because again, it was explaining to him that, hey, this is good, but he's just like, it's a waste of time. That was his thing. And honestly, they've even shown in gaming, this is actually something that people can use to be able to curb anxiety, to help in mental capacity. It makes your, what do you call that? Synapses fire more and quicker. So it does actually help. There's even one game that is actually prescribed to help with a medical condition. Honestly, we've seen in the Destiny community where there was a man who I forgot exactly what happened to him, but it was a brain injury that he had. And this was playing that game was the only thing that he was able to do. And it was considered rehab for him. Everything else that the doctors were trying wasn't working, but this worked. And they prescribed it for him after that. Destiny wasn't the other game that was listed as medication, but his doctors actually prescribed him to be able to play the game every day for like an hour or something like that. I forgot what it was. And when that came about, that's how we got that. He was the only person that got the one gun, the Fate of No Fool. Forgot what that is. It's that.
The Fate of All Fools. Yeah.
So it's very, very interesting that he came with that. He is not necessarily backtracked, but he's, like I said, he's been enlightened at this point on that with it. It was just funny.
Oh my goodness!
Considering, those numbers that came out for how streaming is actually increased during the time of lockdown. So
and this is kind of good as we were talking a little bit about Ninja. Ninja's one of the biggest streamers in the world, and I think a lot of us, people who listen to our podcast, I think a lot of you might remember when he went over to Mixer, and then he had this exclusive deal that was like millions and millions of dollars to only stream on Mixer. $30 million to stream on Mixer. Unfortunately, Mixer did not make it. I will give them credit, that they had a plan in place to kind of transition all of their streamers over to Facebook Gaming. And some of the people that they had contracts with had the option to keep that contract with Facebook Gaming or terminate the contract and go to something else.
Actually, the contract was doubled in some cases. And in the case of Ninja, it was tripled. They would have tripled what he was getting from Mixer if he stayed with Facebook Gaming.
Wow. Like Ninja and like King Ithalian are probably like on totally different levels than a lot of people. So I can see that, like I can absolutely see that for them. But I think at least they did that, because they definitely, like, Sunday night, everybody was streaming on Mixer, doing their thing. And Monday morning, Mixer was like,
we shutting the studio down in a month.
Yeah, we shutting it down. At least they said y'all can go to Facebook Gaming and maintain whatever contracts you had, instead of just being like, you got to figure it out.
Also, Facebook tried in pulling over a lot of people and keeping the numbers, if that makes sense, because some people were actually guaranteed that they'd make like $3,000 over the period of 90 days if they stayed with them.
Right.
But if you were somebody who was making more than that, that's insane for you to actually go. That you're only guaranteed that, whereas other people who hadn't even made it, or who were actually trying their best to make it on Mixer, and they were trying to get, partner and everything like that and getting their stuff up, like they just got screwed because you had to meet a certain threshold to even get that. So I hate that happened, but the market was kind of getting saturated with some of this stuff, because Mixer, for what it wasn't a great competitor. I get that they were trying to take on the behemoth, but they rolled that shit out terribly. They really did. And then tried to cover it up with plaster with Ninja and the other streamers that they pulled over. Just didn't work. Much like their reveal. As I said, they were trying to do as much as they could. Mixer was just not they were not part of this. They were just not in the game. There were some numbers that came out. And honestly, I think this is when Mixer was kind of like, yeah, we just need to squash this. We need to let it go. So Stream Elements and some other companies actually came out with numbers that were saying how the live streaming industry is having an insane moment right now as far as growth in viewership and just activity on their platforms. So in 2019 of April, Twitch had around 750 million views, 819 million possibly. YouTube Gaming, same time frame, 279. Facebook Gaming, which is new competitor within the market, being 86 million. And Mixer at that point had 37 million. Same time this year, so April 2020. Now, Twitch went from 750 million to 1.49 billion. That is 101% growth. That's ridiculous. So Twitch basically doubled their viewership from April 2019 to April 2020. That's insane. YouTube Gaming did the same thing from 279 million to 461. Facebook Gaming, which actually had the most growth over time, which was 86 million to 291 million. That was a 238% increase. Pull-up Mixer went from 37 million to 37.1 million. It was just not for them.
You know, that's very surprising to me because I had heard of Mixer and I had never heard of Facebook Gaming until Mixer shut down. I didn't even know Facebook Gaming was a thing. Though.
I know you've seen the Facebook Watch, right? Those shows.
Yeah, I've seen that, like Red Table Talk, and they talking about entanglements and all that. I've seen that, but like Facebook Gaming, I have not seen. YouTube Gaming, I've definitely seen. Twitch, I've definitely seen. And Mixer, I had at least heard of. I mean, admittedly, Mixer was not something that I watched.
Yeah.
You know, I looked at it a couple of times. I don't know why it was different. Like, I really don't.
It was honestly
understand why I didn't continue to watch it, but I just didn't.
Honestly, for me, it was the interface and trying to interact with them was a little bit more. It was janky. I'm gonna just say that it didn't flow as well as Twitch was. That's just my opinion.
I got you. I guess that was what it was for me because I really can't think of what it. Because I mean, if you really think about it, at the end of the day, all of them, you're watching people play games. You had the ability to type in a chat box and they interact with you, or they don't, just depending on the streamer. And you can subscribe and or follow or whatever. I guess the interface was just weird with Mixer or something because I don't know, but Mixer is not something that I continue to watch. Facebook Gaming, I had never heard of, and the growth that it's had is crazy to me. Consider, you know, I feel like my ear is pretty close to the streets on these gaming streets for me to not even know Facebook Gaming was a thing. You know, YouTube Gaming, there are people that I follow. Twitch, follow people, subscribe to people. So it doesn't surprise me. And these numbers, just this growth in this industry, takes me back to something that one of the CEOs that I think we've talked about before, John Ledger, ex-CEO at T-Mobile, one time went on Twitter and said, I don't understand why anybody would watch someone else play a video game. And kind of similar to the backlash Joe Rogan got. He got that same sort of, instead of backlash, let's say that same sort of education about gaming and streaming and people watching other people play games. To like the next tweet was like, I stand corrected. Also, these are the esports leagues that we now sponsor. So it's just.
I really think that there's a horizon that's coming over for the esports in general. It's one of those industries that people were just
at that cash register though.
Hey, like you said, got to hustle. But I think it's just one of those industries that nobody saw coming. Even though we knew it was on the horizon, I don't think anybody saw it to be this. Because even when you could do the streaming and stuff on PlayStation and stuff like that, it was just mainly more for just fun and for people. We would see like the crazy stuff that people would do, and they would do some crazy shit. But we never thought, oh, this will be something they'll just take it and make Twitch. That never occurred to me.
Oh, and you said that made me think about something. I think it's interesting that Mixer chose to go with Facebook Gaming.
That was definitely a fuck you to Twitch and you.
It was, and to YouTube, because like when you think about it, those two companies are direct competitors to Microsoft. So yeah, it makes sense where Facebook is not so much. See, I think that to me, this is what is probably going to end up being the main thing about it. I think you're going to probably see some kind of deep integration between Facebook gaming and the new Xbox.
Yes. Yes, they've already said that.
Oh, they have? Okay.
Already...
I think that's what's really going to be going on here. And I mean, hey, I guess now we can talk about the new Xbox and the PlayStation 5.
Got to. Oh, Lord.
Heck, Microsoft, they need to do better. Like, I'm sure the Xbox is a powerful console. I'm sure the games are going to look beautiful. In fact, I know they are. The games are going to look beautiful. Mm-hmm. They're going to have some fun games. But the way that they roll these things out is just poor. I think they could do a much better job. Like, for example, they came out with that, I think it was in June, they had a Xbox Games event. Like, they announced that we're going to showcase gameplay. We're going to be talking about gameplay from all of these games. And this event ended up being like a 1 or 2 hour long event. And it was straight video games. Like, some people talked for like 5 minutes at the beginning and 5 minutes at the end. And it was just video games that they showed for this long event. But none of them was actual gameplay. You talked up this event being all about gameplay, and then what you showed was just all trailers for an hour or 2 hours or however long it was. And they looked great, but nobody actually saw gameplay. So that was very disappointing.
Well, explain why that is disappointing, because I think other people will be like, well, at least you got to see the game.
The reason that is disappointing is because when they show those trailers, a lot of times the trailer is put together like an action scene. It's like Michael Bay went in there and directed a trailer for this video game. And it's not necessarily even being rendered on the Xbox. Like, they could build this thing on an incredibly powerful computer and it looks absolutely amazing. Like, it looks like photorealistic graphics. Everything runs smoothly and perfectly and beautifully. And then when you get the game, it's Anthem. You know what I mean? But that's what I'm saying. So that's why people, like, the trailer is great. When you tell people that you're going to see gameplay, what they want to see is, I want to see somebody playing the game on the console. Like, this is what it's going to look like when I'm playing the game.
Boy, say it's Anthem. All right. You're right. And a lot of the times when they do that, it's running on one of the most powerful computers or workstations you've ever seen. So it looks amazing. If you're running it on a console, you're not going to get that. Or even if you're running on a PC, you're not going to get that. So you need to have something to be apples to apples. And as Jules said, Anthem is a very good.
Yeah, Anthem is a good example, because when they showed Anthem, like all those, if you could see me doing air quotes, all those gameplay reveals from Anthem, that game looked like it was about to be the best thing ever. Mm-hmm. Like, it had crazy weather effects going on. Like, it looked like they were flying through a hurricane, and everything was populated with like indigenous life, and all the leaves on the trees and everything looked fantastic. Like, it looked incredible. And then when you got the game, like, there was nothing. Yeah. It didn't look like that at all. Like, even the hub zone where you go to pick up missions didn't even look the same.
That was one of the biggest things that people were talking about. You're right. I forgot about that.
So that's why they got that backlash from that. Like, people were like, yeah, the games look cool, the trailers were cool, but you told me this was going to be gameplay, and it's like not even a question. Like, this is not actual gameplay footage. So it was just a bad thing to do. Like, don't do that. Don't hype it up as gameplay and then do that. They make it so easy for Sony.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that. You're right.
Like, they make it so easy. So Sony comes back, like, I don't know how much later, maybe 2 weeks, a week. They have a state of play event where they show gameplay. It lasts for like 30 minutes. Somebody talks for like 10 minutes at the beginning. So really it's like 20 minutes of gameplay, but it was actual gameplay. And that event went over so much better. They showed maybe 5 games, but it was gameplay. So people know exactly what they expect. Like, this is what it's going to look like running on a PS5. And it looks fun and it looks good.
We good?
And it's fine. Yep. And then so Xbox, I guess maybe the next month, they have another event where they're going to show gameplay, and they highlight one of the more popular games. They decide they're going to highlight Halo Infinite. I mean, they're showing it. They're saying it runs in 4K at 120 frames per second, blah, blah, blah. And in that moment, people are excited because it's gameplay. They can see what the game looks like. And as you know, Halo is now wholly owned by Microsoft. Like, they control that intellectual property. So they're able to get their whatever developer they want to develop that game. And then, you know, there's a few more trailers in between. And then they show the trailer for the next expansion of Destiny 2. Let me say this, because I just talked all that stuff about trailers. With a game like Destiny 2, that game has been out for so long that you know what it's going to look like, even if all you get is a trailer. So for a game like that, a trailer is okay because I know what it's going to look like. But don't just show me a trailer for a game that I've never seen before, especially if you tell me that it's going to be gameplay. But anyway, back to this. So they showed this trailer for Destiny 2, and that looked so much better than Halo. And I just think that it's ironic. And this is the same thing that you saw in the comments is like, so Microsoft bought this property from Bungie, and this is what they've done with it. Like, it looks like, compared to that trailer, and you're telling me this is 4K, 120 frames per second. This looks like Mario 64 compared to what we just saw from Bungie with Destiny 2, with the new trailer for Destiny 2. They got to stop this, man. And the reason I say that's a gaffe is because, yeah, Destiny 2 is going to be on Xbox, but it's also on PlayStation. As somebody, if I'm trying to make a decision, I probably don't really care about buying Halo as much since I know that this is going to be on PlayStation 2. And Sony also has some other games that I want. Because I remember last time I saw that new Horizon game, and that looks incredible. And I actually saw the gameplay. I didn't just see some trailer. They just make it so easy for Sony to just like do the most basic thing and look good.
Even when the reveal came up and people were just bashing on it and, you know, everything like that. Because there was one that was done, I think, in June. And then there was another one in July, right?
Mm-hmm. The one in June is the one where they said it was going to be gameplay and it was all those trailers. Correct. July is when they did. It was gameplay. Like, they actually played Halo Infinite. Like, they showed gameplay. But then they shot themselves in the foot.
So July rolls around, and it, as Jules said, that's the one that looks like Mario 64. And they still hadn't learned, clearly, to the point where they actually had to take down the previous one from YouTube because it got so many dislikes. And you still show this? Like, really? What else is needed? Like, for real? And, you know, eventually they did come out and say, oh, well, we'll take the criticism into consideration. And yes, the graphics aren't up to snuff and blah, 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 blah. And the last time I saw something like this happen, we got a new Sonic. And I don't care who you are, but that was an awesome little movie.
Oh, the Sonic movie? Oh, you know what?
It was awesome.
I feel like that's different. No, you're right. It's different, but Microsoft and Xbox got a track record. Like, we saw this same thing when PlayStation 4 and Xbox were coming out. Like, Xbox came out and they said all this stuff and everybody was like, hey, Microsoft, everything you said was really shitty. And then Sony came back the next week, and that's when the CEO was like, let me show you how you trade games with your friend. And he just gave him a disc. And so people were like,
what the hell is this?
That's it. What you mean you can't trade games with your friends on Xbox? It's just that same thing where they keep doing. I don't know why they do this. Like, stop it. Just do the things that your consumers want and you'll be fine. Like, there is enough room for Sony and for Xbox, and you just keep doing this to yourself to the point where, like, now Sony, like when Xbox Series 1 and PlayStation Pro came out, the Series 1 was definitely the better console. It's just that Sony had built up so much goodwill with customers on the back of Microsoft messing up that PS4 Pro just did so much better and continues to do better. Yeah. And I think that you're going to see the same thing with Sony and the PS5. Oh, you got another. Let me say this too. Xbox is not doing everything poorly. I think that their streaming service, it sounds pretty good. Like, that was actually what they showed, that Destiny 2 trailer to kind of reveal was that the next Destiny 2 expansion is going to be included in their Xbox Game Pass, which is similar to something like Stadia, where you can stream the games anywhere. Like, you can use your phone, you can use a laptop, whatever. If you have an internet connection, you'll be able to stream those games. And so for people that have a subscription to that game will be included for free. And I think that things like that are good. And we have not seen something like that from Sony, or we haven't seen an update to their PlayStation Now service, which was really bad. They tried to do that years ago, even before Stadia, and it just didn't work very well and still doesn't work very well. So hopefully they too will have some sort of update to it. But Xbox Game Pass looks like it's going to be pretty good.
Okay. I don't know how to feel about that because, like you said, now that I'm thinking about it, could be some Anthem shit.
It's quite possible. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. Like I said, Microsoft does not, at least for me, does not have the best track record when it comes to what they've shown in their gameplay reveals and what you actually get. even now that they're showing actual gameplay from specifically Halo Infinite, man. Like, as I was watching the gameplay, I was like, oh, it looks like Halo. And in my mind, that was good until I realized it looks like Halo from the original Xbox. Not like a new, updated, new Halo. Like, it looks the same. That's not good enough at this point.
I think they need to go talk to somebody. COVID has gotten to them. That's all I can say.
Well, look, let me tell you what's going on right now. I think we've reached the end of this episode.
We got the, so.
Yeah, I don't know.
We have the outro.
I'm trying to think of something to say to close it out. I got nothing. Look, man.
We got an outro.
Look, I got to say something, Jessica. I got to tell the people something.
That's the outro.
Look, be careful out there. Do the things that you need to do to take care of yourself. It's a very stressful time. If you can do so safely, find some time to get out of the house, even if that's just getting out, getting in your car, driving around the neighborhood, or walking around your building. Do something to get out of the house and give yourself, I'm going to say, some sort of breathing room. Like, just do something to clear your mind. Find something that you can do that's a productive hobby, something that you love to do. I've got some friends that are embroidering now. I have some plants that I've planted. One of them died. It is what it is, but the other ones are fine. Man, just do some things. Stretch yourself a little bit right now. Let's go ahead and call this one an episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to the Cool Black Nerd podcast. Again, check us out on social media. Always go check out saywhatradio.com. There are several podcasts in our network that I think everybody would enjoy and love and just have a great time listening to.
Always. We out.